All right, welcome everyone to round 5 of our EdCamp. We are so happy to have Christie Biggerstaff here with us to talk about early literacy initiatives, letters. She's going to be talking about Senate Bill 9 and early literacy assessments as well. So welcome, Christie. If you would go ahead and tell the folks a little bit about yourself, and we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for being here.
Sure. Thanks everyone for being here. A quick little backstory to my career. I was a teacher and a 4th and 5th grade reading, writing portfolio, if you were old enough to be in that group. Led that when I was a reading teacher. I was an assistant principal, and then for the last 8 years of my career, I was an instructional supervisor and all the roles that come with that in Monroe County, Kentucky. So I've ran the gamut as far as the district level goes, except superintendent, and I'm married to one, and that is enough. So I'm married to Dr. Kurt Biggerstaff, who is in Cumberland County, Kentucky. He's a next door neighbor to Monroe County. So I get to listen to all that, but not be involved in all that comes with a superintendent. But literacy has been a thread throughout my entire career. Have always focused on instructional practices when it comes to literacy, because I truly believe that literacy is the foundation of all the learning that takes place from a child's beginning of their educational career to the end. So I'm going to jump right into it because I have a lot to talk about today and only 30 minutes to do so. I always start out with the why we chose early literacy to focus on at KDE when it comes to Senate Bill 9. Senate Bill 9 come to fruition because of the data that you see on your screen. It always, and I've looked at this data over and over and over again, but I'm always taken aback when I see it. But I'll give you a quick summary. Half of the students in Kentucky are not reading at proficient levels, actually more than half in some subgroups. Of course, COVID came along and exacerbated that. And in 2021, only 29.8% of our students were reading at proficient and distinguished levels, which is devastating. We bounced back a little bit in 2022 at 45%, but not nearly what we need it to be. That's over 118,000 students in the state of Kentucky that are not reading at proficient levels. And when you know the research behind that, and I'll just summarize that very quickly, we know that if students are not reading on grade level by 3rd grade, they are likely to drop out. They're likely to have attendance issues. They're likely to have problems and be directed into the juvenile crime line. There was a research study that was done in Texas not too long ago of their inmates statewide, and half of their inmates were dyslexic. So let that sink in for just a second. And it's very scary. And none of us want that for one child, let alone half of the children in the state of Kentucky. To kind of break that down a little bit further, this is always gut-wrenching to look at too. 75% of our Black students in the state of Kentucky are not reading at proficient levels in 3rd grade. 75%. It's so alarming. 63% of our economically disadvantaged, which a lot of us have those students. I know in Monroe County, most of our students were economically disadvantaged. English learners, 71%. Students with disabilities, 68%. I could go on and on and on, but I do want you to understand the why behind Senate Bill 9. Our legislators, of course, we all knew that there was an issue. And when I talk about this issue, I do want you to understand that I'm not trying to point a finger at anybody. It is a collective issue. It is our problem. It's the state's problem. And half of our students are not reading at proficient levels. So we have to do something about that. And that is where Senate Bill 9 comes into play. So Senate Bill 9 has a lot of different moving pieces and parts that I'm going to talk about today. But I do want to draw your attention to some of the hot topics that have been going on in literacy in our media. And if you've not heard about these, I beg of you and implore you to please look these up. First of all, there was a very large 6-7 chapter article done in the Courier Journal over the summer that talks about our literacy crisis in the state of Kentucky. It's called Between the Lines. It costs $1. If you are not a subscriber to the Courier Journal, it costs $1 to read that. It's very eye-opening, in-depth look at the literacy crisis in Kentucky. Another, if I could recommend one thing, if you don't listen to anything else that I say today, I want you to listen to the Soul to Story podcast if you have not. Emily Hanford did an amazing job, and she talks about literacy and the issues with literacy. It's garnered national attention. A lot of people talking about it on social media. It will draw you in. Even my husband, who I said was a superintendent, who has ADHD, you can't get him to listen to a long period of anything. I would play this when we were on the road going somewhere, and I would stop it. And the minute we got back in the car, he'd say, turn that podcast back on. I want to listen to that podcast. So I promise you, if it kept his attention, it will most certainly keep your attention. And the last thing I want to draw your attention to is the Purple Challenge. It's hard to describe this video, but it is a parent who had a child who was reading leveled readers. And she realized very quickly when she took the pictures away from her child's book, even though on point she could say the word purple over and over and over and over again, she took the pictures away and she could not send out the word purple, did not know what that purple meant. And it's got some other things in that video. So look that up on YouTube, because it's a great little video to kind of open your eyes to that. So here's some pieces and parts that I talked about with Senate Bill 9. We're going to talk about two of those pieces today. And one of those are the early intervention and instructional piece that we are talking about with assessments. So in Senate Bill 9, it does state that that superintendent shall select at least one reliable and valid universal screener for K-3 and one reliable and valid diagnostic assessment for K-3. Now, I want to say right here very quickly that every K-3 student needs to have a universal screener. That is the assessment that we give our students that tells us very quickly, most of the time 3 times a year, oh, there might be an issue. They're not on level, or they might be deemed at risk. So if that is given and your students are deemed at risk or not on level, then you give them the diagnostic assessment. So not all students need a diagnostic assessment, only the students that are not meeting benchmark. And that looks different on whatever universal screener you might, your superintendent might choose to select. Also, another piece of this is that all teachers need to be trained on how to read that assessment data. They need to be able to know how to administer that assessment correctly. This is not a yearly thing. Once a teacher is trained on that, they're trained. You would only have to go back through and train your new teachers or anybody that didn't get initially trained. So that's not, I get that question a lot in email. That is not a yearly requirement. Just once those teachers are trained in that assessment that you're giving and the diagnostic you're giving, then they're trained and they're good to go. We do have a list at KDE of universal screeners and diagnostics that we recommend. Not to go into all the boring details, but this was a task that took several months. We tried to leave no stone unturned. We looked at so many assessments during the course of our review, and I still get questions. So I'm going to try to address those with you here. But one of the main questions that I get is, why is blank assessment not on the list? So you might have an assessment that you have used in your district for years, and it's not on our recommendation list. And that could be for one of 3 reasons. Number one, they did not have a technical manual. And again, not to get into the boring details, but we have criteria that to ensure that they are reliable and valid. And if they did not have a technical manual so that we could review that data, then we could not recommend them, because we wanted to ensure that they were reliable and valid, which is what the law states. Number 2, if they're not on our list, if they didn't have a technical manual, maybe they did have a technical manual, but it did not meet our criteria. Our criteria is not astronomical. I do want to state that, because just to put this very simply, for example, I believe our criteria is set for validity at 0.7. Well, remember that 0.5 is a coin toss. coin toss. I'm dyslexic. A coin toss. So 0.5, you toss that coin up, it could be heads or tails. So our criteria is not astronomical. So maybe they didn't meet our criteria, and we don't need to be using assessments that are low in reliability and validity, because you're wasting your time and your students' time. And the third reason that they might not be on the list, it could be very possible that we've not heard about the assessment. I have had that happen with one in particular, and a district reached out to me and said, hey, will you review this assessment? And we have never heard that. It didn't make any of the list of the most common. We reviewed that technical manual. It did meet our criteria, and we added it to the list. So that can all be found on the early literacy screening assessments page. So if you want to check that out, if you have not, there's 2 documents there. There's a 1-pager that kind of gives you all the information about that specific assessment. And there's also a comparison chart. As I said, I was a district instructional leader and a principal. So I tried to put in all the information that I knew would be your decision-making points, cost, the training cost, how long it would take to train, all the pieces and parts that we look at when we try to purchase an assessment suite. So that is all there for you to look at. If you have not, you do still have time to, the bill states January 1st, but as long as you have your professional development lined up and that choice made by the 23-24 school year, you are good to go. The second part that I want to talk about today is the most exciting part. And if you have not heard about it, I hope this is, you take this new information and run with it. It is the professional learning support strategies that we are doing at KDE. And basically that all falls under the umbrella of the Kentucky Reading Academies. And we want to ensure that we increase the reading outcomes. Remember, back to the why, we are trying to raise the proficiency rates for our students. So this is what the Kentucky Reading Academies were created for. And this is what makes them so unique, something that I have never been or known for KDE to do in my career. First and foremost, it removes the financial barriers for that professional learning. The professional learning that I'm going to talk about here in just a few minutes is, of course, Letters is the first one that we're offering. Letters is a very expensive professional learning. It is $1,500 per participant. So Senate Bill 9 is the funding mechanism that's allowing us to do this and allowing us to give this to the educators in the state of Kentucky. We absolutely want every K through 3 at the very least, and I would love to have K through 5 teachers to participate in Letters. You might not ever get the opportunity to do this again at free. It comes with a cost, so for free. So absolutely. The Kentucky Reading Academies it invests in people and not programs. The Letters is not a curriculum. It is not a program. It's not a step-by-step. It's learning. It's information. It's information that we all should have received in college. And again, not pointing fingers at our college, because we have a lot of college university participants that are taking Letters with us through the Kentucky Reading Academies, which is so exciting because it is our dream and our wish to get pre-service teachers to get this knowledge from the get-go, so we don't have to go back and retrain everyone. It's evidence-based. You can implement it with any curriculum that you have in your district, and it's sustainable. I just sent out a survey at the beginning of this year to our phase 1 participants in Letters. The feedback that I have received from them is phenomenal. It's hard, it's difficult, it's a lot to juggle as an educator. I'm taking the Letters for Educators myself, and in my new role and trying to juggle everything is difficult. So I can't imagine what it's like to be a teacher and trying to take this learning too. But they all say it is worth it. It's absolutely worth their time and their drive. Letters basically teaches teachers what to teach to help our students and increase their success in reading. It also helps us to recognize the why some of our students struggle, and then give us strategies that we can implement to help those struggling readers. And most importantly, I feel like the how. Once you know how students learn how to read, then all the other kind of trickles down and makes sense and fits into a puzzle. And like I said, the survey results, the people that have been participating has absolutely said that connection for them has made the most difference in their classroom. One thing I do want to draw or draw out from that survey data too is a lot of people think that our colleges and universities have switched over and maybe talking about more of the science and the brain when it comes to reading. I looked at 50 different educators that took that survey that had only been teaching 1 to 5 years. And almost all of them, I think out of the 50, 48 of them said that this was brand new information and very relevant information. So we still have a lot of work to do on that front. And that is also part of Senate Bill 9, but we'll get there. It's just one piece at a time. And this bill is a massive bill. So if you are not in Letters Phase 1, you can absolutely join us in Letters Phase 2. There will be 3 phases of this work. We hope to have up to 24 educators or more to join us each phase. We fell short of that. Our first, I think we ended up with around 2,000 participants in Phase 1, and I'm completely happy with that. That was a lot of educators, many of them that are doing this on their own time, in their own will, and they have been absolutely all about it. So that is fine. But we're going to open that up for Phase 2 in May. The registration will open up in May. We do have a letters interest form. So if you've not signed up on that and you have educators in your district that are wanting to take the letters training, they can sign up on our interest form and then be notified when the registration form goes live. Now, to kind of backtrack a little bit and tell you a little bit more about letters, it is a 2-year commitment. And as I said, it is difficult. It is a master's level course. So you have a platform very much like you are taking an online college class. There's a platform that you're going to work through the material. And then there are live webinars that kind of pull everything that you've learned on the platform together and summarize it and go back over that. There are 8 units total. So we break them up into 4 units per year. So the first year is 4 units. So for each of those units, you're going to have a live webinar to go with each one of those units. That can take place during the day. If your district is willing to give you a sub, there's day trainings, and we even chunk the day up into whole day, or you could do half a day. We have afternoon sessions. We have Saturday sessions. So we tried to have a vast variety of different mechanisms so educators could join in their own time at their own place. So anybody that works with our public school students that are interested in taking the letters are absolutely encouraged to join. Another exciting thing that happened to us mid-phase, this last phase, is that we were able to partner with our educational cooperatives and offer a rank change, which is so exciting and so worth it. I mean, this is challenging, as I said, and I love that we are now able to offer a rank change on top of just the letters coursework. So 2 of those educational cooperatives, I believe it's GREC and then Southeast South Central, have approved programs for rank changes with letters. So if you're interested in that, you can reach out to them. I do know that we have several other cooperatives that have a plan in place, and they're trying to get all of that lined out to offer that as well. So reach out to your local cooperative and see if they have that in place, or if they're going to, if you are interested in the CEO rank change, so you can get a rank change as you're working through the platform. We do have several resources available Online, there is a guidance document on the Read to Succeed Act. As I said earlier, we do have the valid and reliable assessment screeners and diagnostics list on the website. We do have a Kentucky Reading Academy's page, and that's where you will find the interest form. I do want to talk to you just a few more minutes because I do have about 10 more minutes left. I do want to tell you what's coming on the horizon. Just kind of give you a heads up with Senate Bill 9. One of the biggest pieces of Senate Bill 9 at a school level for a school to do is if a student on grade 3 does not reach their benchmark or level by grade 3, then they have to basically be put into a read at home plan. And that read at home plan and that reading team is going to basically come up with a plan very similar to an IEP on how to get that student on level. So your reading team would consist of different people. If you have an MTSS team already in your building, that might look something very similar. It might even be the same people that will develop the reading plan. And once that reading plan is in place, of course, you will progress monitor and develop and track and intervene with students to get them on level. We are developing some templates. As a district administrator in the past and a principal, I told my team that I absolutely want to have examples and templates that you can use, because most of the time when I was asked to do something, I would be like, I need an example. I need something to, does KDE have a template? What have they got that I can, put this together with? What does a reading plan look like? Give me an example. So we're developing some examples for you to look at and have, so you will be able to follow that and make your own or use that example that we put online. But this also comes with a read at home plan, which we are again developing a resource book that you can basically take and input your students' assessment levels and data, so the parents are notified and they are on the same team, and they can use that resource book then to help their child at home. And it's very simple activities that they can do. For example, with phonemic awareness, playing I Spy and sounding out the letters as they find something that they spy. Very simple activities. They won't need resources to do most of the activities at home. And it just, many of the parents are, want that information. They want, how can I help my son or daughter be a better reader? So we're developing that read at home plan resource booklet right now as well, that will be posted online soon. Another piece of that is if they don't reach benchmark on grade level in grade 3, and they don't reach proficiency on the KSA by grade 4, then there's other steps that have to be taken in order to get that child to reading proficiency. And that's the hope, and that's the goal, to get all of our students, to ensure that those 118,000 students that I talked about earlier are not leaving our elementary schools and going on not proficient in reading. So that's the goal. That was a lot to kind of tell you about without the information on the screen, but that's coming.
And we have a couple of questions. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
Just wanted to make sure we get to these questions.
Yes, ma'am.
So one says, is this, and you might have already addressed this before I could get to it, is this by the end of 3rd grade based on state assessment, or just in 3rd grade based on a universal screener?
It's both. So in our guidance document, it states that if a child is not on level on the universal screener, this is what has to happen. They have to develop a reading team, that sort of thing. And then it goes further into, and I can share, I have that listed. I think I'm going to go back. And then right here, that's Senate Bill 9 guidance. That's all in that guidance. If you want to click on that document, and it'll tell you.
Okay. And then the other one is, could you share how to best connect preschool with the Letters Initiative Science of Reading implementation?
Yes, ma'am, or sir. I can't say who asked the question.
Leanne Adkins asked that question.
Sure. We are working with our Office of Early Learning currently to hopefully be able to provide the preschool edition, the Head Start preschool edition of letters. So that is called Early Childhood Letters, and hopefully that is coming. That is a very it's a more succinct. Of course, the information that students need in preschool varies and is different than kindergarten. So instead of that being a 2-year program, most of the time that's a 6-month program, and hopefully that is coming, and that is coming soon. So they do have an early childhood letters, and we hope we get to basically give that or partner with, I'm not going to take that from them because that is the early learning departments kind of thing. But I really feel like that is going to happen very soon. Is there any other questions?
You can unmute your mic or type them in the chat.
Let's see. I saw letters for administrators. Well, there'll be multiple cohorts for that. Yes, we offer basically letters for administrators and letters for K through 5 teachers every year in that phase. Something I didn't talk about, but there might be people on this call that are already participating in letters that might be interested in this. This phase 2, we're going to also offer facilitators training. So if you would like to facilitate letters, units 1 through 4 in your district, and be able to provide that learning to all your new teachers, you can sign up to be a facilitator and get that training too.
Excellent. All right. What other questions might you have? Christie, we want to thank you so much for sharing. And we can stay. Okay. Sorry. Someone have a question? All right. Thanks for sharing, and I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.